I dare you to do it. You know you want to. Trust me, this is the moment.
On her birthday, a single dare changed everything. She kissed the most dangerous-looking man in the bar just to prove she wasn't boring, then ran away laughing. She didn't know he was a mafia boss who never forgot a face. He didn't know she was a powerful man's hidden daughter, protected at all costs. One kiss turned into obsession. Secrets collided. And when bullets flew, he made an impossible choice that exposed them both. Welcome back, my dearest supporters. I've been very engaged for a while now. But from today, expect to be getting 2 stories in a day. I will be trying something different, and I hope you'll love it. Subsequent posts will be coming with images. Are you looking forward to it? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out. The bass thundered through Elena's ribs as she pressed her back against the cold glass railing of the Manhattan rooftop bar, 23 stories above the glittering chaos of the city. She'd never been good at this. The performance of joy, the carefully curated wildness her friends wore like expensive perfume. Around her, bodies moved in practiced rhythm, designer dresses catching the neon lights, laughter sharp as champagne bubbles bursting against her skin. "You're doing it again," Sophia said, materializing beside her with 2 drinks, one of which she pressed into Elena's reluctant hand. That thing where you look like you're watching a documentary about fun instead of actually having it. Elena took a sip, the vodka burning sweeter than she'd expected. "I'm having fun." Liar. Sophia's red lips curved, her dark hair catching the light like silk. "You've been standing here for 20 minutes looking like someone's trying to solve a murder mystery. It's your birthday, babe. Smile, dance, kiss a stranger. Live a little." If only Sophia knew. If only any of them knew what living actually cost. "I'm fine," Elena said, but even to her own ears it sounded hollow. 23 years old today, and she felt ancient, carved from stone and secrets. While her friends had spent their teenage years sneaking into clubs and collecting hearts like baseball cards, Elena had been learning to disappear, to be invisible, to exist only in the carefully controlled spaces her father deemed safe. "Fine is the saddest word in the English language," Madison announced, stumbling over with Jade attached to her arm, both of them flushed with alcohol and something Elena couldn't name. Freedom, maybe. The kind that came from not knowing that every breath you took was monitored, measured, controlled. Jade's eyes were fever bright as she leaned in, her perfume thick and sweet. "Truth or dare, Elena? And if you say truth, we're going to be very disappointed in you." Elena's stomach tightened. She'd grown up around dangerous men who could kill with a word or a gesture. But somehow this felt more terrifying. These girls with their careless joy, their assumption that the world was fundamentally safe, that consequences were for other people. "Come on," Sophia urged, her voice dropping to that particular frequency of female friendship, the one that said, "We love you, but we're also tired of protecting you." When was the last time you did something reckless, something that made your heart actually race? Every day, Elena thought. Every time I walk out the door. Every time I use a fake name. Every time I pretend I'm normal. But she couldn't say that. So instead, she lifted her chin, met Jade's challenge with something that felt almost like courage, and said, "Dare." The girls erupted, Madison actually squealing, and Elena felt something unfurl in her chest. Terror, maybe, or its close cousin, exhilaration. Okay, Jade said, spinning in a slow circle as she surveyed the bar. The place was packed, Manhattan's elite, and those who pretended to be, all of them playing their own careful games. Her gaze swept past the traders in their loosened ties, the models with their practiced pouts, the trust fund kids buying bottles they couldn't actually afford. Then she stopped. "Him," she said, and something in her voice made Elena's skin prickle. The serious one, in the corner. Elena followed her gaze, and her breath caught. He sat alone at a table in the shadows, away from the press of bodies and noise. Dark suit, dark hair, the kind of posture that suggested he was comfortable with violence, the kind of stillness that made everyone else's movement seem frantic. 2 men flanked the entrance near him, not drinking, not relaxing, just watching. Bodyguards, Elena realized, or something worse. "You want me to go talk to him?" Elena asked, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "Talk?" Madison laughed, high and sharp. "No, sweetie. We want you to kiss him." The world seemed to tilt. Elena gripped the railing harder, her knuckles going white. "That's insane." "That's the point," Sophia said, but her voice was gentler now. "Elena, you're 23. When was the last time you kissed someone? And I mean really kissed them, not some sad little peck at a college party." Never, Elena thought, because her father had made it clear that relationships were leverage, that caring about someone was handing your enemies a loaded gun. But God, she was so tired, tired of being careful, tired of being invisible, tired of watching life happen to everyone else while she stood behind bulletproof glass. "What if he says no?" she asked. Jade grinned. "Then you tried. But look at you, babe. You're gorgeous. He'd have to be dead to say no." He might actually be a killer, Elena thought, studying the man's profile. There was something about him that reminded her of her father's associates, the ones who came to the house for meetings that happened behind closed doors. Men who'd learned to wear civilization like an expensive coat, beautiful, but fundamentally dishonest. "Fine," Elena said, and the word came out stronger than she'd expected. "But if I get thrown out, you're all coming with me." The walk across the bar felt like miles. Elena was aware of everything, the sticky floor under her heels, the way conversations seemed to pause as she passed, the hammering of her own heart. She'd been trained since childhood to read rooms, to identify threats, to calculate exit strategies. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to turn around. But she was so damn tired of listening to her instincts. Up close, he was devastating. Not handsome in the conventional sense, his features were too sharp for that, too predatory, but compelling in a way that made her mouth go dry. Mid-30s, she guessed, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen things, done things, survived things. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, barely visible in the dim light. He looked up as she approached, and his eyes were dark, nearly black in the shadows. They moved over her face with an intensity that felt physical, cataloging, assessing, deciding. Elena's prepared speech died in her throat. "This is going to sound insane," she started, her voice barely audible over the music. He stood, the movement smooth and controlled, and suddenly he was much taller than she'd anticipated, easily 6'3", broad-shouldered, solid. The kind of physical presence that made the air feel thicker. "You lost a bet," he said. And it wasn't a question. Elena blinked. "How did you—" "Your friends," he interrupted, his voice low and rough, the kind that suggested whiskey and late nights. "They've been watching you walk over here like it's a sporting event. And you have that look, the one people get when they're doing something they've been dared to do." Heat flooded Elena's cheeks, so much for mysterious and alluring. Is it that obvious? Only to people who pay attention. He studied her for another long moment, and Elena had the unsettling sensation of being read, of having pages turned she didn't know existed. What was the dare? She could lie. Should lie. But something about his directness made dishonesty feel pointless. "To kiss you." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "You could just tell them you did it." "I could," Elena agreed. But I don't lie to my friends. Admirable. He tilted his head slightly, considering. Most people lie constantly. To themselves, mostly. Are you going to let me? The words came out before she could stop them, bold and breathless. He was quiet for 3 heartbeats. 4. Elena was about to apologize, to retreat, to add this to the long list of humiliations her mind catalogued in the dark. Then he said, 1 kiss? Then you walk away and don't look back. It should have been a warning. Later, Elena would realize it was. She stepped closer, close enough to smell him, expensive cologne, and something darker underneath. Something that reminded her of her father's, study after meetings, gun oil and leather. Her hands were shaking as she reached up, steadying herself with one palm against his chest. Solid. Warm. His heart beat steady under her fingers, much calmer than her own rapid pulse. You're nervous, he observed, but he didn't move away. Terrified, she admitted. His hand came up, cupping her jaw with surprising gentleness, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Then why are you doing this? Because I'm tired of being afraid, Elena thought. Because I want one moment that's mine. Because I'm so lonely I could scream. But she didn't say any of that. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. His lips were still against hers, his body rigid. And Elena thought, oh God, I've made a terrible mistake. Then he kissed her back. It wasn't gentle. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, controlling the angle, and his mouth moved over hers with the kind of certainty that suggested he always knew exactly what he wanted. The kiss was consuming, demanding, the kind that made the world narrow to just this, just his lips and his hands, and the way her entire body seemed to catch fire. Elena gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she forgot where she was, forgot the dare, forgot everything except the electric sensation of being this close to something dangerous. When he finally pulled back, Elena was dizzy, her lips swollen, her heart trying to beat out of her chest. Go, he said quietly, but his hand was still in her hair, his thumb tracing the curve of her ear. Before I change my mind about letting you. Elena stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her own feet. Her friends were screaming, jumping, pulling at her, but she barely registered it. She turned as they dragged her toward the exit, laughing and cheering, and looked back one last time. He was still watching her, his expression unreadable, one hand raised in a gesture that might have been farewell or warning. Then the crowd swallowed him, and her friends were pulling her down the stairs and into the street, into the cool October air that did nothing to calm the heat in her veins. Oh my God, Sophia was shrieking. Oh my God, Elena, you actually did it! You kissed him! Did you see his face? I can't believe you, Madison said, nearly crying with laughter. You just walked up to the most intimidating man in the bar and kissed him like you do it every day. Jade was filming on her phone, narrating breathlessly. And here we have Elena Ross, finally proving she's not a robot, making out with a man who definitely looked like he could murder us all. Elena barely heard them. Her lips still tingled, her hands were still shaking, and somewhere deep in her chest, in a place she usually kept locked down tight, something had cracked open. She didn't know his name, didn't know anything about him except how he tasted and the way his hand felt in her hair. It should have been enough, should have been just a story to tell, a moment of recklessness to prove she was capable of it. But as they piled into a taxi, laughing and recounting every detail, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made the most dangerous decision of her carefully controlled life. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that 15 blocks away, in the back of a black Mercedes, the man she'd kissed was having the exact same thought. His name was Dante Salvatore, and he hadn't felt anything in over a decade, hadn't let himself. Feeling meant caring, and caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerable men in his world ended up in the river with concrete shoes. But that girl, whoever she was, had gotten under his skin in the space of one kiss. "Boss," Marco said from the front seat, his voice careful. "Want me to find out who she is?" Dante stared out the window at the passing lights, his mind already working through angles and possibilities. He should say no, should forget about her. She was clearly just some college kid, some sheltered princess playing at being wild for one night. But there had been something in her eyes. Recognition, maybe? The look of someone who understood what it meant to wear a mask. "Discreetly," he said finally. "I want to know who she is." Marco nodded, already typing on his phone. By morning, he would discover something that would change everything. The girl didn't exist, not in any meaningful way. No childhood records, no social media footprint beyond a carefully curated college account, no family ties that traced back more than 5 years. She'd appeared, fully formed, like someone had created her from nothing. And in Dante's world, people who didn't exist were either in witness protection or being protected by someone powerful enough to erase them. Which meant that girl, that nervous, beautiful girl who'd kissed him like it was an act of rebellion, was either bait or leverage. And he was going to find out which. Elena made it through her apartment door, through the gauntlet of goodbyes and giggling recaps, through the careful ritual of removing makeup and changing into pajamas, before she let herself think about what had happened. Then she sat on the edge of her bed, in the dark, and touched her lips. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father's head of security. "You were at Lux tonight." With who? Elena's blood went cold. Of course they'd been watching. They were always watching. "Just friends," she typed back. "Birthday celebration." The response came immediately. "Stay home tomorrow. We need to talk." She threw the phone onto the bed and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was why she couldn't have anything. This was why every moment of potential joy came with an asterisk, a warning label, a price. But for just a moment, in that bar, with that stranger's mouth on hers, she'd felt something other than trapped. It had to be enough. It had to be. Across the city, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Victor Moretti stood at his window and stared at the lights below. His daughter was lying to him. Not directly. Elena was too well trained for that. But in the spaces between words, in the things she didn't say. His phone rang. Tony, his head of security. "She was clean tonight," Tony reported. "Just the college friends. Nothing unusual." "Who else was at the bar?" A pause. "We're still running IDs, but it was the usual crowd. Traders, trust fund kids, some models." "Anyone connected?" Another pause, longer this time. "Sir, Dante Salvatore was there." Victor's hand tightened on his glass. "Did they interact?" "No, he was in a different section. Left before she did." "You're sure?" "Positive. No contact whatsoever." Victor nodded, but something in his gut twisted. Coincidences in his world were usually anything but. "Double her security. And I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to." "Already done, sir," Victor ended the call and took a long drink. Elena thought he was suffocating her, that his protection was a cage. What she didn't understand, couldn't understand, was that the cage was the only thing keeping her alive. The underworld was built on leverage, and a daughter was the most devastating leverage of all. His wife had learned that lesson, had paid for his mistakes with her life. He wouldn't, couldn't, let history repeat itself, even if Elena hated him for it. 3 days passed. Elena went to her classes at Columbia, smiled at the appropriate times, took notes she'd never look at again. Her friends were still talking about the kiss, about how wild it was, about how Elena was finally coming out of her shell. She hadn't told them about her father's interrogation, about the 2-hour conversation that was really a lecture about safety and responsibility and the dangers of being reckless. She'd nodded, apologized, promised it wouldn't happen again. All the while thinking about dark eyes and gentle hands and the way it felt to be chosen, even for just a moment. She was leaving the library on Thursday evening when she saw him. At first, she thought she was imagining it, that her mind was playing tricks, conjuring what it wanted from shadows and streetlights. But no, there he was, standing outside a coffee shop 3 blocks from campus, wearing jeans and a black jacket, looking nothing like the intimidating figure from the bar, and somehow more dangerous for it. Their eyes met across the street. Elena's first instinct was to run. Her second was to cross toward him, moth to flame. She compromised by standing frozen on the sidewalk, her heart doing complicated acrobatics in her chest. He crossed to her instead, weaving through traffic with easy confidence, and suddenly he was there, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the way his hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar. "Interesting coincidence," he said, and there was something in his voice that suggested he didn't believe in coincidences at all. "I go to school here," Elena said, hating how defensive she sounded. "Do you stalk college campuses often?" His mouth quirked, not quite a smile. "No. I have a meeting nearby. Saw you walking. Thought I'd say hello." "Hello," Elena said, and immediately felt stupid. "Hello," he replied, and this time he did smile, just a little. "You ran away the other night, before I could get your name. That was the deal. 1 kiss, then I leave." "True." He tilted his head, studying her with that same unsettling intensity. "But I'm curious by nature, and you're interesting." "I'm really not," Elena said automatically, the response so ingrained she didn't even think about it. "Be forgettable. Be boring. Be invisible." "Liar," he said softly, and the word sent shivers down her spine. "You wouldn't have kissed me if you were boring." "Fair point." Elena shifted her backpack, hyper-aware of the people flowing around, them of the fact that somewhere nearby, her father's men were probably watching, cataloging, reporting. "I should go." "Should you?" He stepped closer, and Elena caught that scent again, expensive and dangerous. "Or do you just think you should?" "Those are the same thing." "Not even a little bit." He was close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Tell me your name." "Why?" "Because I'd like to buy you coffee, and calling you the girl from the bar seems impersonal." Elena's mind raced. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of attention her father had warned her about. But God, when was the last time someone had looked at her like this? Like she was interesting, compelling, worth pursuing? Never. The answer was never. "Elena," she said, and immediately regretted it. Should have lied. Should have given him the fake name she used for takeout and taxi drivers. "Elena," he repeated, like he was testing the weight of it. "I'm Dante. Dante." The name felt like a secret, intimate and heavy. "Is this how you usually meet women?" Elena asked, trying for light and landing somewhere near breathless. "Lurking near universities? Is kissing strangers on dares how you usually meet men?" "Touché." He gestured toward the coffee shop behind him. 20 minutes. That's all I'm asking. If you hate it, you can leave, and I promise I won't accidentally run into you again." Elena knew she should say no. Should walk away, go home, forget this ever happened. Her father's voice was loud in her head, warning and threatening and afraid. But she'd spent 23 years listening to that voice. 20 minutes, she agreed. The coffee shop was small and warm. The kind of place where writers hunched over laptops and students studied in corners. Dante led her to a table by the window, away from the crowd, and somehow the simple act of him pulling out her chair felt more intimate than the kiss had been. "So," he said once. They had their drinks, his fingers wrapped around an espresso cup that looked tiny in his hands. "Tell me about Elena." "Not much to tell." Elena wrapped her hands around her latte, using it as a shield. "I'm a student. I have friends. I'm exceptionally boring." There's that word again. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed but alert, like a cat pretending to doze. "You keep saying you're boring, like you're trying to convince both of us." "Maybe I am." "Why?" The question was so direct it caught her off guard. Why did she pretend to be boring? Because interesting people got noticed. Because noticed people got hurt. Because her mother had been interesting, vibrant, alive, and she'd ended up dead. "Self-preservation," Elena said finally. Something flickered across Dante's face. Understanding, maybe. "That's a heavy phrase for coffee shop conversation." "You asked." "I did." He took a sip of his espresso, his eyes never leaving hers. "Okay, lighter question. What are you studying?" "Art history." "Passionate about it?" Was she? Elena tried to remember when she'd chosen her major, tried to recall any genuine enthusiasm, but it had been her father's suggestion, something safe and useless, something that wouldn't lead to a career that might put her in the public eye. "It's fine." "Fine," Dante repeated. That word again. "What word would you prefer?" "Something real. Something that tells me who you actually are, not who you think you should be." Elena's throat tightened. This stranger, this dangerous, beautiful stranger, was looking at her like he could see through all her carefully constructed walls. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. "I'm trying to figure that out," she admitted quietly. Dante nodded slowly. "Okay, that's honest. I can work with honest." "What about you?" Elena asked, desperate to shift focus. "What do you do?" "Import, export, logistics, boring business things." It was Elena's turn to call him out. "That's not real. That's not who you actually are." His smile was sharp. "Careful. That sword cuts both ways. So we're both liars." "We're both careful," he corrected. "There's a difference." They talked for an hour. Then, too. Dante ordered them food neither of them ate. Pastries that sat forgotten between them as the conversation ranged from superficial to substantial, and back again. He was smart, wickedly funny when he wanted to be, and beneath the charm, there was something broken. Something that recognized the broken pieces in her. He asked about her childhood, and she gave him the edited version. Boarding schools abroad, moving around a lot. A father in business who valued privacy. All technically true. All fundamentally dishonest. He offered his own carefully curated story in return. Grew up poor in Hell's Kitchen. Worked his way up through, let's call it entrepreneurship. Now successful enough to afford the kind of life he'd dreamed about as a kid. Also, technically true. Also hiding oceans beneath the surface. They were both lying, both performing. But underneath the performance was something genuine. A recognition. A connection. It terrified Elena more than anything her father had ever warned her about. "I should really go," she said finally, glancing at her phone and seeing 6 missed calls from Tony. "I'm expected somewhere." Dante's expression flickered, something almost like disappointment. "Of course. Can I see you again?" Yes, Elena thought. God, yes. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said instead. "Why not?" "Because my father would lose his mind. Because you're clearly dangerous. Because I'm supposed to be invisible, and you look at me like I'm the most visible thing in the world." "Because I'm graduating soon," Elena lied. "Moving away. It wouldn't be fair to start something." Dante studied her for a long moment, and Elena had the terrible feeling he knew she was lying. "Okay," he said finally. "If that's what you want." It wasn't. Not even a little bit. But she stood, gathered her bag, forced herself to walk toward the door. "Elena," Dante called when she was halfway there. She turned. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think you're extraordinary. And I think you know it. You're just not allowed to admit it." The words hit like a physical blow, so accurate it hurt. Elena didn't trust herself to respond. She just turned and walked out into the October evening, into the cool air that did nothing to calm her racing heart. She made it 2 blocks before she realized she was being followed, not by Dante, by someone else. A man in a dark jacket, keeping pace exactly 30 feet behind her, professional enough to blend, but not professional enough to disappear. One of her father's men, probably. Or, oh God, someone else entirely. Elena's training kicked in. She turned down a busier street, kept her pace steady, pulled out her phone. Before she could dial, a black Mercedes pulled up. Beside her, the back window rolling down to reveal Dante's concerned face. "Get in," he said. "I'm fine." "You're being followed. Black jacket, 40 feet back. He's been on you since you left the coffee shop." Elena's blood went cold. "How do you know?" "Because I've been following you too." At her expression, he added, "Making sure you got home safe. Call it a character flaw. Now get in the car before whoever that is decides to close the distance." Elena looked back. The man was closer now, maybe 20 feet, his hand moving inside his jacket. She got in the car. Marco was driving, she realized. The same man who'd been at the bar, one of Dante's bodyguards. He pulled smoothly into traffic, taking turns at random, clearly trying to lose their tail. "Who are you?" Elena asked, her voice shaking. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something, then turned to face her fully. "Someone who pays attention. Who was that man?" "I don't know. But you know why someone would be following you." It wasn't a question. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "I need to go home." "We're taking you home," Dante assured her, "after we lose your friend back there." "Where's home?" Elena rattled off an address 3 blocks from her actual apartment, an intersection she could walk from safely. Dante relayed it to Marco, then turned back to her. "Elena, I need you to be honest with me. Are you in danger?" "No," she said automatically. "That was too fast. Try again." "I'm fine. It's probably just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding that requires a man with a gun to follow you?" Elena's head snapped up. "You saw a gun?" "Shoulder holster. Left side. Professional carry." Dante's expression was grim. "So I'll ask one more time. Are you in danger?" "Yes," Elena thought. "I'm always in danger. That's what being Victor Moretti's daughter means." But she couldn't say that. Couldn't admit who she was, who her father was, what it all meant. "I'm fine," she repeated. "Thank you for the ride. This was very kind." Dante looked at her for a long moment, and Elena could see him calculating, deciding. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her palm. "My number. If you need anything at all, you call me. Okay?" Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. They pulled up to the intersection she'd named. Marco checked the rearview mirror, gave Dante a nod. Clear. "Thank you," Elena said again, reaching for the door handle. Dante's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Elena, whatever you're hiding, whatever you're running from, I meant what I said. You're extraordinary. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Then he released her, and she stumbled out onto the sidewalk, into the October night that suddenly felt much colder. She made it home without further incident, let herself into her apartment, locked every lock. Then she pulled out Dante's card and stared at it. Dante Salvatore. A phone number. Nothing else. She should throw it away, should delete his number from her mind, and never think about him again. Instead, she tucked the card into her wallet, next to her student ID, next to the picture of her mother she'd stolen from her father's study. Her phone rang. Tony. "I'm fine," she said before he could speak. "I know you were watching. I know you saw. I handled it. Your father wants to see you, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Elena closed her eyes. "Tell him I'll be there." She ended the call and sank onto her bed, her mind racing. One kiss was supposed to be simple, supposed to be just a moment, just a story to tell. But nothing in Elena's life had ever been simple, and she had the terrible feeling that Dante Salvatore was about to make it infinitely more complicated. What would you do if you discovered someone was having you followed? Would you confront them, or try to lose them quietly? Across town, in his penthouse overlooking the glittering grid of Manhattan, Dante stood at his window with a glass of scotch and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Marco stood nearby, waiting, patient as always. "She lied," Dante said finally, "about almost everything." "Most people do, boss." "Not like that. Not with that kind of precision. She's been trained to lie. Or she's just a scared girl who knows better than to trust strangers." Dante took a drink, letting the burn ground him. "Did you get the plate on that car? The one that was following her? Private security firm, high-end, the kind that works for our kind of people." Our kind of people, a polite way of saying criminals, killers, men who lived in the spaces between legal and lethal. "So she's connected," Dante said. "Or protected. Could be a witness, relocated." She didn't run like someone in witness protection. She ran like someone who's used to being watched. Dante turned from the window, his mind already working through possibilities. "Did you find anything on her background check?" Marco shifted, uncomfortable. "That's the thing, boss. I found nothing. And I mean nothing. Elena Ross appeared 5 years ago, enrolled at Columbia, good grades, clean record. But before that, it's like she didn't exist. Everyone exists somewhere. Not her. No birth certificate, no childhood records, no passport before age 18. Someone with serious resources erased her." Dante's fingers tightened on his glass. In his world, that meant one of 3 things. Witness protection, which Marco had already suggested. A child of someone in deep cover, spy or operative. Or, and this was the most likely option, the hidden daughter of someone powerful enough to make the past disappear. "Keep digging," Dante ordered. "I want to know who she belongs to." Belongs to. The phrase tasted wrong in his mouth. That girl, Elena, didn't belong to anyone. She was too, contained for that. Too tightly wound. Like she'd been taught to take up as little space as possible. It made him want to give her all the space in the world, which was dangerous. Dante had built his empire on being rational, on never letting emotion cloud judgment. Sentiment got people killed. He'd watched it happen, had profited from other men's weaknesses, their stupid, fatal attachments. But God, when she'd gotten in his car, when she'd looked at him with those eyes full of secrets, something in his chest had cracked. He couldn't afford cracks. "Boss," Marco said carefully, "if she's protected by someone in our world, getting close to her is complicated. I'm aware. And if her father is who I think he might be—" "Don't," Dante interrupted. "Don't speculate. Find out. Then we'll decide what to do with the information." Marco nodded and left, and Dante was alone with his thoughts and the glittering city below. He pulled out his phone, looked at the number his assistant had traced. Elena's number, pulled from the coffee shop's security, footage from the credit card she'd used. He could call her. Should call her, actually, make sure she got home safe. But something stopped him. Some instinct that said she was already spooked, already wary. Pushing now would only make her run faster. So instead, he saved her number, poured another drink, and tried to convince himself that this was just curiosity. Just due diligence. Just making sure that a random girl wasn't going to become a problem. He was still trying to convince himself when he fell asleep 3 hours later, and the thing that kept him awake wasn't business or strategy or the usual calculations. It was the memory of how she'd tasted, and the way her hands had shaken when she touched his chest. Elena made it through the night on fury alone. Fury at her father for having her followed. Fury at herself for getting in Dante's car. Fury at the universe for making connection feel like betrayal, for turning every moment of potential joy into a calculated risk. She showed up at her father's house in Brooklyn at exactly 8 a.m., let herself in through the service entrance like always, like a secret he kept tucked away from the world. The house was beautiful, old brick and new security, the kind of place that whispered money and power. Elena had grown up here, in the rooms her father had deemed safe, and she'd always felt more like a prisoner than a daughter. Victor was waiting in his study, standing by the window with his back to her, his posture rigid with barely controlled anger. "Sit," he said without turning. Elena sat, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully blank. She'd learned this performance young, how to be invisible, how to disappear even while sitting in plain sight. Victor turned, and Elena saw the fear beneath his fury. That was the worst part, knowing that everything he did came from love, from the desperate need to protect what he'd already lost once. "You were followed last night," he said. "I know. Tony told me. By one of my men. And by someone else." Elena's stomach dropped. "Someone else?" "We're still identifying him. But Elena, you got into his car. You let a stranger, a dangerous stranger, drive you home." "He helped me lose your man," Elena shot back before she could stop herself. "He kept me safe." "He's Dante Salvatore," Victor said, and the name landed like a gunshot. Elena's mind went blank, then raced, then blank again. Dante Salvatore, the name she'd heard whispered in her father's study, spoken with respect and fear, and barely concealed hatred. The young boss who'd taken over Manhattan's underworld through strategy instead of violence, who'd made himself indispensable and untouchable in the space of 4 years. Her father's rival, his enemy. The one man Victor had explicitly warned her about without ever explaining why. "I didn't know," Elena whispered. "Didn't you?" Victor moved closer, his voice dropping. "You kissed him in a bar. You had coffee with him. You got in his car. And you expect me to believe you had no idea who he was?" "I didn't." Elena stood, her own anger rising to meet his. "How would I know? You never tell me anything. You hide me away like I'm some dirty secret. And then you get angry when I don't recognize your enemies." "I hide you to keep you alive," Victor roared, and Elena flinched. He never yelled, never lost control. The fact that he was doing it now told her exactly how afraid he was. They stared at each other, breathing hard. The space between them filled with 23 years of love and resentment and mutual terror. "Elena," Victor said finally, his voice carefully controlled again. "Dante Salvatore is not a good man. He's smart, ruthless, and he doesn't do anything without a reason. If he's showing interest in you, it's because he knows who you are. And if he knows who you are, he'll use you to get to me." "Maybe he just likes me," Elena said. But even to her own ears it sounded desperate. Victor's expression softened slightly. "Baby, men like Dante Salvatore don't just like anyone. They calculate, they strategize, and they exploit weakness. So I'm a weakness." It wasn't a question. "You're everything," Victor said quietly. Which is why you need to stay away from him. No more coffee dates. No more chance encounters. You see him again, you run. Understand? Elena nodded, but her mind was already racing, already trying to make sense of the past few days. Had Dante known who she was? Was the coffee shop really a coincidence? Had everything, the careful questions, the gentle concern, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, had it all been performance? The thought made her feel sick. I need you to promise me, Victor pressed. Promise me you'll stay away from him. I promise, Elena said, and this time she meant it. Because if Dante had been using her, if this had all been some calculated move in a game she didn't understand, then she wanted nothing to do with him. But if he hadn't known, if the connection had been real, then staying away was still the right choice. Because men in her father's world didn't get happy endings. They got buried. And she'd rather have the memory of one perfect kiss than watch someone else she cared about die. Victor pulled her into a hug, rare and brief, and Elena let herself have it. Let herself be, for just a moment, a daughter instead of a liability. I love you, he said into her hair. Everything I do, it's because I can't lose you, too. I know, Elena whispered back, but knowing didn't make the cage feel any bigger. She left her father's house and went straight to class, threw herself into her work, tried to focus on Renaissance art and classical techniques, and anything except dark eyes and gentle hands. Her phone buzzed 3 times during lectures. Unknown numbers. She didn't answer. By evening, she'd convinced herself she was fine, that this had been a lesson learned, a narrow escape, that she'd go back to her carefully controlled life and forget about Dante Salvatore and the way he'd made her feel seen. Then she got home and found flowers on her doorstep. Not roses. That would have been too obvious, too aggressive. Instead, white peonies, dozens of them, arranged simply in a clear vase with a single card. The card read, "Thank you for coffee. I hope you made it home safe. D." Elena stared at the flowers for a full minute, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. This wasn't the gesture of someone who'd been playing games. This was sweet, thoughtful, the kind of thing someone did when they genuinely cared. Unless that was part of the game, too. Unless thoughtful and sweet were just more effective weapons. Elena picked up the vase, carried it inside, and set it on her kitchen counter where she could see it. Then she pulled out her phone and stared at Dante's card. She should call her father, should report this, let him handle it. Instead, she saved the number under, a fake name, and went to bed, where she dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous hands, and the feeling of being chosen. What would you rather have, one perfect memory, or the risk of something real? The next morning, Elena woke to 17 missed calls from Sophia and a text that read, "Emergency brunch. Now. Bring coffee." She showed up at their usual spot, a tiny French place in the village, to find all 3 of her friends already seated, their faces a mixture of concern and barely suppressed excitement. "Okay," Jade said before Elena had even sat down. "We need to talk about your stalker." Elena froze, her coffee halfway to her lips. "My what?" "The hot guy from the bar," Madison clarified. "He's been asking about you." "Asking who?" Sophia leaned in, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "One of the bartenders is dating my cousin. Apparently, Mystery Man came back the next night, trying to figure out who you were. Asking your name, if you were a regular, if anyone knew anything about you." Elena's stomach twisted. So Victor was right. Dante had been investigating her from the start. "And?" she managed. "And nothing," Jade said. "Nobody knew anything. You're like a ghost, babe. No social media, no online presence, nothing." He left frustrated. "That's because I'm boring," Elena said automatically. "Or mysterious. Madison countered, which is way better. Guys love mysterious. I don't want to be mysterious. I want to be left alone. The three girls exchanged looks, the kind of silent communication that came from years of friendship. Okay, Sophia said carefully. What aren't you telling us? Nothing. I don't think getting involved with a stranger from a bar is a good idea. Even a stranger who sends flowers? Elena's head snapped up. How did you know about the flowers? Because we're outside your building right now, Jade said, turning her phone to show a video call with, oh God, with Dante standing in her lobby, holding another vase of peonies and looking impossibly beautiful in morning light. You've been spying on me? We put a camera in your hallway, Madison said, completely unrepentant. After that time, you got food poisoning and didn't tell anyone for 2 days. We worry. That's insane. That's literally stalking. Says the girl with a hot stranger sending her flowers, Sophia shot back. Now, are you going to go down there, or are we? Elena looked at the phone screen, at Dante waiting patiently, at the flowers he'd brought, at the expression on his face that suggested he knew this was risky, but was doing it anyway. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Stay away from him. He's dangerous. He'll use you. But when had her father ever let her make her own choices? When had she ever been allowed to decide what risks were worth taking? I'll go, Elena said, standing so abruptly her chair scraped. But you three stay here and delete that camera. Not a chance, Jade called after her. But Elena was already moving, already making the decision that would change everything. She made it to her building in 6 minutes, burst through the lobby doors breathless and furious and terrified, to find Dante exactly where the camera had shown him, leaning against the wall with flowers in one hand, and something that might have been nervousness in his expression. You can't be here, Elena said without preamble. I know, but I wanted to make sure you were okay, after last night. I'm fine, you can go. Elena, no. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I know who you are, Dante Salvatore. I know what you do, who you work for, what you want. And the answer is no. Something flickered across his face, surprise, definitely, and beneath it, hurt. What I want. My father told me everything, about you being his rival, about this being some kind of power play, or manipulation or whatever. So you can stop with the flowers and the concern and the act. Dante was very still, for a long moment. Then he carefully set the flowers down on the lobby's reception desk and took a step toward her. Your father, Victor Moretti. It wasn't a question, but Elena nodded anyway. And he told you I've been using you, haven't you? No, Dante said, and the word was so flat, so honest, that Elena almost believed him. I didn't know who you were when you kissed me. Didn't know until yesterday, when my people finally connected the dots. Elena Ross doesn't exist. But Elena Moretti, Victor's hidden daughter, the one he's kept secret for years, she's real. Elena's throat tightened. Then why are you here? If you know who I am, if you know what it means. Because I wanted to see you again, Dante interrupted. Before I knew. Before it got complicated. I wanted coffee, conversation, maybe dinner if you'd let me. I wasn't. This wasn't strategy. It was just you. I don't believe you. I know. Your father's trained you well. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration breaking through his usual control. Elena, I'm a lot of things, most of them not good. But I don't lie to women, and I don't use them as pawns. If I wanted to hurt your father, there are 100 ways to do it that don't involve breaking someone like you. Someone like me, Elena repeated. Someone real. Someone who's so tired of being careful that she'll kiss strangers on dares just to feel something. He stepped closer, close enough that Elena could smell his cologne, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Someone who deserves better than to be locked away like a secret. You don't know anything about me. I know you're lonely. I know you're smart, way smarter than you pretend to be. I know you hate being controlled, but you love your father too much to really fight it. And I know that when you kissed me, for just a second, you felt free. The words hit like bullets, each one finding its mark with devastating accuracy. That's not fair, Elena whispered. No, Dante agreed. None of this is fair. But it's true. They stood there in the bright lobby, morning light streaming through the windows, the city waking up around them. Elena knew she should walk away, should go upstairs, call her father, let him handle this. But God, she was so tired of being handled. If I have coffee with you again, she said slowly, my father will find out. He has people watching me. And when he finds out, I don't even know what he'll do. Probably try to kill me, Dante said matter-of-factly. And that doesn't scare you? Terrifies me, but not as much as never seeing you again. It was a line. Had to be a line. Men like Dante Salvatore didn't say things like that unless they wanted something. But the way he was looking at her, open and almost vulnerable, suggested maybe, just maybe, he meant it. One coffee, Elena heard herself say. And we don't talk about our fathers. We don't talk about business. We just talk, like normal people. Like Dante's smile was sunrise slow, devastating in its genuine pleasure. I'd like that. But if I find out this is a game, if you're using me to get to him, I will make sure you regret it. Noted. He offered her his arm, old-fashioned and somehow charming. There's a place 2 blocks from here. They make excellent cappuccinos and have terrible lighting, so your father's men will have a hard time getting decent photos. Elena laughed despite herself, despite everything. You've thought about this. I think about everything. It's a character flaw. She took his arm, felt the solid warmth of him, and let him lead her out into the October morning. Behind them, forgotten on the reception desk, the peonies waited in their vase, white and perfect, and beginning to bloom. 3 blocks away, in an unmarked car, one of Victor's men picked up his phone and made a call he knew would destroy whatever fragile peace existed between the Moretti and Salvatore families. And across the city, in Fiumcino, a penthouse that overlooked everything, Victor Moretti listened to the report and felt his carefully constructed world begin to crack. His daughter was falling for his enemy. And in his world, that meant war. If you knew loving someone would put them in danger, would you walk away or fight to protect them? The coffee shop Dante chose was tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing boutique, the kind of place tourists walked past without noticing. Inside, mismatched furniture and dim Edison bulbs created pockets of shadow that felt almost conspiratorial. He was right about the lighting, Elena realized. Her father's men would struggle to get clear surveillance here. The fact that she was thinking tactically about coffee with a man who made her heart race said everything about how twisted her life had become. You're doing it again, Dante said, settling into the worn leather chair across from her, 2 cappuccinos between them. Doing what? Calculating, I can see it in your eyes. You're running through scenarios, exit strategies, consequences. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Can you turn it off, just for an hour? Can you? His smile was rueful. Probably not. But I'd like to try. Elena wrapped her hands around her cup, letting the warmth ground her. Okay. Normal conversation. You start. Favorite place you've ever lived? The question caught her off guard with its simplicity. Geneva. I was there for 2 years, 15 to 17. There was this view from my bedroom window, the lake and the mountains. And in the mornings, everything would be covered in mist. It felt like living in a cloud. Sounds lonely? It was. Elena met his eyes. But it was also beautiful. Sometimes those things coexist. They do, Dante agreed quietly. I've never been anywhere beautiful. Grew up in Hell's Kitchen. Barely left Manhattan except for business. Always meant to travel. Never found the time. Or the reason. Or the reason, he echoed. What's Geneva like beyond the mist? They talked for hours about cities and childhood and the 1,000 small things that make up a life. Dante told her about learning to fight in alleyways behind his building, about the neighbor who taught him chess when he was 9, about discovering he was better at strategy than violence and building an empire on that realization. Elena told him about boarding schools where she was always the new girl, about learning 6 languages because her tutors changed every year, about the strange isolation of being surrounded by people but never really known. She didn't tell him about her mother. That wound was still too raw, even 12 years later. And he didn't tell her about the things he'd done to build his empire. Some truths were too heavy for coffee shop confessions. Your friends, Dante said eventually, stirring sugar into his 3rd espresso. The ones from the bar. They seem free. They are. Their fathers are diplomats, businessmen, legitimate powerful men. They don't have to hide. Do you resent them for it? Elena considered the question, really considered it. Sometimes. But mostly I just envy them. The ease of their lives. The way they can post photos and make plans and exist loudly in the world. You could exist loudly too, if you wanted. No, Elena said softly. I couldn't. Not without putting everyone I love in danger. Dante was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. Your father loves you, in his way, even if that way feels suffocating. How do you know? Because I've been watching him for years, studying him, learning his patterns. And the one thing he's never compromised on, never used as leverage or trading material, is you. Even when it would have been strategically smart. Even when keeping you hidden cost him opportunities. He chose your safety over his empire. Dante looked up, his dark eyes intense. That's not nothing. It's also not freedom. No, Dante agreed. It's not. The weight of that admission sat between them, heavy and honest. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Tony, terse and direct. Your father wants you home. Now. She showed it to Dante, watched his expression shudder slightly. You should go, he said. I should. Neither of them moved. Elena, Dante said carefully, I need to be honest with you about something. Her stomach dropped. Here it was, the revelation, the truth that would prove her father right. Okay. When I found out who you were, my first instinct was tactical. I thought about how knowing you could be useful, how your father would react, what advantages it might create. He held up a hand when she started to stand. Wait, please. Let me finish. Elena sat back down, her jaw tight. That instinct lasted maybe 6 hours. Then I realized that using you would require treating you like a thing instead of a person. And I can do a lot of morally questionable things, Elena. But I won't do that. Not to you. Why not? The question came out bitter. Because I'm special? Because we have some cosmic connection? That's naive, Dante. We barely know each other. Because you remind me of someone, he said quietly. My sister, Isabella. She's 21 now, studying medicine in London. Living under a different name because the safest thing I ever did for her was make her disappear. And every day I wonder if I made the right choice, if protecting her was worth stealing her identity, her freedom. Elena's anger deflated. You have a sister? Had. Legally, Isabella Salvatore died in a car accident when she was 16. The girl in London, the medical student, she's someone else entirely. Someone I visit twice a year, always in secret, always wondering if I'm putting her at risk just by existing in her orbit. God, Dante, that's horrible. That's survival, he corrected. In my world, the people you love become weapons other people use against you. Your father understands that. It's why he's hidden you so carefully. Then this, Elena gestured between them, is impossible. If we're both right about how dangerous connection is, then whatever this is, it can't happen. You're probably right. Probably. Dante leaned forward, his voice dropping to something intimate, almost vulnerable. Elena, I've spent 15 years being careful, being smart, never taking risks I couldn't calculate. And it's kept me alive, kept me powerful, kept me in control. But it's also made me empty. Like I'm living inside a shell of a life, going through motions, accumulating wins that don't actually mean anything. That sounds lonely. It is. But it's safe. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, his fingers hovering an inch away. Until some girl on a dare walked up to me in a bar and kissed me like it was an act of rebellion, and suddenly safe feels like the worst possible option. Elena's breath caught. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I'd like to. That's all I'm asking for, Elena. Time to actually know you, without strategy or calculation, or our father's war hanging over us. Just time. My father will never allow it. I know. He'll see it as betrayal, as choosing you over him. I know that too. Then what are you suggesting? That we sneak around like teenagers? That we build something on lies and secrets? Dante finally closed the distance, his hand covering hers, warm and solid. I'm suggesting we try anyway. That we take the risk, knowing it's probably stupid, probably doomed, probably going to end badly for both of us. Because the alternative is walking away from something that could be real. And I've had enough fake in my life. Elena stared at their joined hands, at the way his fingers threaded through hers like they'd been designed to fit. Every rational part of her brain was screaming warnings, listing consequences, calculating the cost. But beneath, the rationality was something wilder, something that had been caged so long it barely remembered what freedom tasted like. If we do this, she said slowly, we have rules, real ones. I'm listening. No using me for information. No strategy sessions disguised as dates. No bringing our father's business into whatever this becomes. Agreed. What else? We're honest. Completely honest. Because if this goes wrong, and it probably will, I need to know it was real while it lasted. Dante nodded, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Anything else? When it gets too dangerous, when the cost becomes too high, we walk away. No grand gestures, no Romeo and Juliet nonsense. We just end it. Cleanly. Something painful flickered across his face, but he nodded. Deal. My turn for rules. Okay. You tell me when you're scared. Not after. Not when it's too late, but in the moment. I need to know when I'm pushing too hard, when this becomes too much. That's fair. And you let me protect you. Not control you, not make decisions for you, but actually keep you safe when necessary. Your father has his methods, but I have mine, and some situations require my particular skill set. Elena understood what he meant. Victor protected through surveillance and restriction. Dante protected through violence. Both methods came from the same desperate need to keep people safe, but the execution was vastly different. Okay, she said, but you don't hurt people unless there's no other option. I can't be responsible for someone dying. I'll do my best. But Elena, you need to understand what my world looks like. Sometimes violence is the only language people speak. I know. I grew up in that world too, remember? I want us to try every other option first." "We will," Dante promised. They sat there for another moment, hands joined, both of them aware they were making a decision that would ripple outward in ways they couldn't predict. Then Elena's phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. "I really do have to go," she said reluctantly. "I know." Dante stood, helped her with her coat in a gesture so old-fashioned it made her heart ache. "When can I see you again?" "I don't know. My father's going to increase security now that he knows about you. So we get creative. There's a gallery opening tomorrow night, the Hamilton on West 23rd. Public, lots of people, completely legitimate reason for both of us to be there. Your father can't object to you attending cultural events. You're assuming I can get an invitation. You're Victor Moretti's daughter. Everyone wants you at their events. They just don't know you exist." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "I'll have an invitation delivered to your apartment. Bring your friends if it makes it less suspicious." "You've thought about this." "I told you, I think about everything." Elena should have found it manipulative, the way he'd already planned their next meeting. Instead, she found it considerate, like he was offering her plausible deniability, a way to see him without explicitly defying her father. "Tomorrow night," she agreed. "But Dante, if my father's men start something, they won't. Too public, too many witnesses. Your father's smarter than that." Elena hoped he was right. They walked to the door together, and just before stepping outside, Dante leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and chaste, and somehow more intimate than anything they'd shared. "Be careful," he murmured against her skin. "You too." Then she was outside, walking toward the subway, very aware of the two men following at a discreet distance. Her father's guards, making sure she got home safe, making sure she didn't do anything stupid. Too late for that. By the time Elena made it to Brooklyn, to her father's house for the inevitable confrontation, she'd constructed 17 different explanations for why she'd been with Dante. None of them were convincing. Victor was waiting in his study, the same room where he'd told her about her mother's death, where he'd explained why she could never have a normal life, where every difficult truth of her existence had been delivered. "Sit," he said, and his voice was dangerously calm. Elena sat. 2 hours, Victor said, pacing in front of the window. "You were with him for 2 hours, at a coffee shop where my men could barely see you, where you held his hand, where you looked at him like he's someone who deserves your trust. He was kind to me. He's a killer, Elena. Dante Salvatore has orchestrated more deaths than you can imagine, all of them clean, all of them untraceable, but dead nonetheless. He's taken territories, crushed rivals, built an empire on manipulation and violence. And you think he's kind? People can be more than one thing." Victor stopped pacing, turned to face her fully. "Is that what you think this is? Some misunderstood bad boy who just needs the right woman to redeem him? That's a fantasy, baby girl. In real life, men like Dante don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are." "Did you change?" Elena shot back. "You fell in love with Mom. You gave her a life, a family. Was that fake, too?" The words landed like a slap. Victor's expression cracked, just for a second, grief and guilt flooding through before he shuddered it away. "Your mother paid for loving me," he said quietly. "With her life. Is that what you want? To become a target? A liability? A weapon someone uses to hurt the people you love? No. But I also don't want to spend my entire life hiding from possibility. Mom knew what your world was like, and she chose you anyway. Don't I get the same choice? You're 23 years old. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Elena interrupted, standing now, her own anger finally breaking through years of careful control. "I understand that you're so terrified of losing me that you've built a cage and called it love." I understand that every choice you make is about your fear, not my safety. And I understand that if I let you, you'll keep me locked away until I'm 40, 50, until I'm so afraid of living that I forget how to do it at all." Victor stared at her, and for the first time in her life, Elena saw her father truly at a loss for words. "I'm not saying I'm going to marry Dante Salvatore," she continued, her voice softer now. "I'm not even saying this is serious, but I'm saying I deserve the chance to find out, to make my own mistakes, have my own relationships, live my own life. Even if it kills you? Even then. Because what's the alternative, Dad? Another 20 years of fake names and hidden apartments, and pretending I don't exist? Is that really better than dying?" "Yes," Victor said fiercely. 1,000 times, you breathing, existing, living even in secret. That's infinitely better than losing you." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, her anger deflating into something softer, sadder. "I know you love me. I know every decision you make comes from that. But love that suffocates isn't actually love at all. It's fear dressed up as protection." Victor sank into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. "Your mother said something similar, the night before she died. She asked me if I was protecting her or imprisoning her. What did you tell her? That there was no difference, not in our world. And what did she say?" Victor smiled, small and broken. "That I was an idiot, that life without risk wasn't life at all, just existence." He looked up at Elena, his eyes wet. "Then she kissed me, went to that charity event despite my concerns, and 23 years of pretending I made the right choice." Elena moved to her father, knelt beside his chair, took his hands. "Dad, I'm not Mom. I'm careful, trained, aware. And Dante, whatever else he is, he understands this world. He knows the risks. That's what worries me. He knows exactly how to exploit them. Or how to navigate them." Victor studied her for a long moment. "You really care about him." "I barely know him, but I want to. Is that so terrible?" "In my world, yes." He squeezed her hands. "But I also remember being young, thinking I could control everything, keep everyone safe through sheer force of will. Your mother taught me how arrogant that was. So you'll let me see him?" "No." At her expression, he held up a hand. "But I won't actively stop you. I'll keep my men on you, keep you as safe as I can, and hope to God that Dante Salvatore is actually the strategist I think he is. Because if he hurts you, Elena, there won't be anywhere he can hide. It wasn't permission, but it wasn't prohibition either. It was compromise." Elena hugged her father, felt his arms wrap around her, tight and desperate and loving. "Be careful," he whispered. "I will." "And Elena, when this goes wrong, and it will go wrong, you come home. No shame, no questions. Just home. Okay?" "Okay." But as Elena left her father's house and headed back to Manhattan, she couldn't shake the feeling that home was becoming a more complicated concept, and that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a place at all. The next evening, Elena stood in front of her closet in her underwear, phone pressed between her shoulder and ear, while Sophia provided running commentary on her outfit choices. "The black dress is too obvious," Sophia declared. "You'll look like you're trying too hard." "I am trying too hard. But he can't know that. Go with the navy blue one, the one with the asymmetrical hem. Elegant, but not desperate." Elena pulled out the dress in question, held it against herself. "What if this is a terrible idea?" "Then it's a terrible idea you look amazing committing to. Madison, back me up." Madison's voice chimed in from speakerphone. "Absolutely. Also, good earrings, the silver hoops. And for God's sake, Elena, fix your hair. What's wrong with my hair? It's in a ponytail. You're going to an art gallery to maybe sort of date a mobster, not the gym. Elena laughed despite her nerves, let her hair down, studied herself in the mirror. When had she last cared this much about how she looked? When had someone last made her want to? Are you sure you don't want us to come? Jade asked, her voice tinny through the phone. We could be your wing women, or your escape plan. No, this is. I need to do this alone. But you'll tell us everything? Sophia demanded. Everything appropriate. Boring, but fine. Now go. You're going to be late, and making a man wait is powerful, but making him think you stood him up is just mean. Elena hung up, finished getting ready, studied herself one final time. Navy dress, silver jewelry, hair loose, minimal makeup. She looked good. Not trying too hard, but definitely trying. The gallery was in Chelsea, all white walls and track lighting, the kind of place where people paid thousands for paintings they didn't understand, but knew they should appreciate. Elena arrived exactly 15 minutes late, enough to make an entrance without being rude. Dante was standing near a massive abstract piece, talking to an older woman in an expensive suit. But his eyes tracked Elena the moment she walked in. The look he gave her was brief, but heated, a flash of appreciation before he schooled his features back to polite interest. Elena took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, drifted through the crowd, very aware of her father's men stationed near the exits. They were being obvious tonight, a message to Dante and everyone else. This girl is protected. She studied a painting for several minutes, something involving aggressive slashes of red and black, before Dante materialized beside her. What do you think? He asked, his voice low. I think the artist was very angry. At what? Everything. Love, maybe. Or the lack of it. Dante smiled. That's more insightful than half the critics here. They keep calling it a statement on capitalism. Maybe it's both. Maybe being angry about love and being angry about capitalism are the same thing. Both are systems that promise fulfillment and deliver mostly disappointment. Cynical. Realistic. They drifted to the next piece together, maintaining careful distance. Two strangers who happened to be interested in the same art. Anyone watching would see nothing suspicious. Your father's men are being obvious tonight, Dante observed. He wants you to know I'm protected. I already knew that. But the display is noted. They moved through the gallery in a careful dance, never standing too close, never talking too long, but always somehow in orbit around each other. Elena learned that Dante actually did appreciate art, that he collected pieces from unknown artists, that he'd bought his first painting at 19 with money from his first real job. What kind of job? Elena asked. The kind I can't discuss in polite company. So, something illegal, something pragmatic. There's a difference. They were standing in front of a sculpture, twisted metal that somehow suggested grace, when Dante said, I need to tell you something. Elena's stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. Your father and I have a meeting tomorrow. Business. It's been scheduled for weeks, long before us. And I wanted you to know, so you don't think I'm using information from you. What kind of meeting? The kind where powerful men pretend to be civilized while negotiating territories and treaties. Nothing dramatic, just the usual dance. Will you be safe? Dante looked at her, something soft in his expression. Worried about me? Apparently, against my better judgment. I'll be fine. Your father's smart enough to know that killing me would start a war he can't win, and I'm smart enough to know the same about him. We'll posture, negotiate, probably both walk away, equally unsatisfied. That's how these things work. That's bleak. That's business. An older couple approached, wanting to talk to Dante about a piece he'd acquired. Elena drifted away, giving him space, and found herself studying a series of photographs, black and white images of city streets at night, lonely and beautiful. "You're her," a voice said beside her. Elena turned to find a young woman, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones. "I'm sorry." "Victor Moretti's daughter, the one everyone whispers about but no one's ever seen. You look like your mother." Elena's blood went cold. "You knew my mother?" "No, but I've seen photos, old ones from before, everything." The woman's expression was calculating, curious. "Does Dante know who you are?" "That's none of your business." "Oh, it absolutely is. I'm Chiara De Luca. My family has interests that overlap with both Moretti and Salvatore territories. And if the two are joining forces through personal connections, that affects everyone's bottom line." De Luca. Elena knew that name, remembered her father speaking about them with disdain and grudging respect. They ran operations in Queens, stayed out of Manhattan mostly, but they were ambitious. "There are no personal connections," Elena said carefully. "I'm at a gallery opening. So is he. That's coincidence, not conspiracy." "Sure," Chiara said, not buying it for a second. "But here's some free advice, girl to girl. Men like Dante Salvatore don't do coincidences. If he's interested in you, it's because you're useful. And when you stop being useful, you become a liability. Thanks for the warning. I'll be sure to take advice from someone whose family is known for kidnapping and extortion." Chiara smiled, sharp and cold. "At least we're honest about what we are." Can Dante say the same? She walked away before Elena could respond, disappeared into the crowd like a beautiful threat. Dante appeared at Elena's elbow. "What did she want?" "To warn me about you. Apparently you're going to use me and then dispose of me." Chiara De Luca is a manipulative opportunist who's been trying to start a war between your father and me for 3 years. Don't listen to anything she says. Then tell me she's wrong. Tell me you didn't calculate every angle before deciding to pursue this." Dante was quiet for a long moment. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider the implications." "But Elena, considering and acting on are different things. Yes, I thought about what knowing you could mean strategically, and then I decided I didn't care, that you were worth more than whatever advantage you might provide. How do I know that's true? You don't. That's what trust is, believing someone even when you can't verify it." Elena looked up at him, at his serious expression, at the way he was looking at her, like she was the most important person in the room, despite being surrounded by powerful people who could advance his interests. "I want to believe you," she said quietly. "That's enough, for now." They stood there for another moment, the space between them charged with things they couldn't say in public, before Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Tony. "Time to go. Now." "I have to leave," Elena said. "I know. Your keeper's getting nervous. He's just protective. So am I." Dante glanced around, then leaned in just slightly, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Tomorrow night. There's a jazz club in the village. Small, mostly empty on Tuesdays. 11 p.m., if you can get away." "That's late?" "That's the point. Your father's men change shifts at 10:30. You'll have a 45-minute window where coverage is lighter. You've really studied his security protocols." "I study everyone's security protocols. It's how I've stayed alive this long." Elena should have found it creepy, the level of surveillance required to know her father's shift changes. Instead, she found it reassuring, like Dante was taking her safety as seriously as Victor did, just with different methods. 11 p.m., she agreed. "But if this is a trap, it's not. It's just jazz music and mediocre wine and a chance to talk without a gallery full of people watching our every move." "Okay." Dante's hand brushed hers, so briefly it could have been accidental. It wasn't. Then Elena was moving toward the exit, toward Tony and the car waiting outside, toward the safety of her carefully controlled life. But as they pulled away from the curb, she looked back and saw Dante watching from the gallery window, his expression unreadable, and Elena realized with startling clarity that she was in trouble. The kind of trouble that felt like falling, the kind that might destroy them both. The next day passed with agonizing slowness. Elena went to class, took notes, smiled at appropriate moments, and thought about jazz clubs and shift changes and the way Dante had looked at her across a gallery full of priceless art. At 10 p.m., she told Tony she was going to bed early. Headache, needed rest. He accepted it with a nod, stationed himself outside her apartment like always. Elena waited 20 minutes, then slipped out through the fire escape, a route she'd discovered at 16 and kept secret ever since. The city at night was different, sharper, more honest somehow. Elena made her way through streets she'd memorized, always aware of her surroundings, of the weight of her phone in her pocket, and the small canister of pepper spray her father insisted she carry. The jazz club was exactly where Dante said it would be, a basement space with a hand-painted sign and music drifting up through the door. Elena descended the narrow stairs, pushed through a curtain of cigarette smoke and dim light, and found herself in a room that held maybe 30 people, all of them lost in the music. Dante was at a corner table, 2 glasses of wine already waiting. He stood when he saw her, that old-fashioned courtesy that shouldn't have made her heart race, but absolutely did. "You came," he said, against my better judgment. Story of my life. Elena slid into the seat across from him, accepted the wine, let the music wash over her. A saxophone, mournful and beautiful, telling stories without words. "My mother loved jazz," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. "Tell me about her." "Why?" "Because you never do. Because grief lives in silence, and maybe speaking it makes it smaller." Elena took a long sip of wine, gathering courage. She was luminous. That's the word my father uses when he talks about her, which isn't often. She could light up a room, make everyone feel seen and important and valued. She was kind in a world that punished kindness. How did she die? Car bomb. Meant for my father. But she borrowed his car that morning. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong choice that killed her. Elena's voice was steady, years of practice, keeping emotion locked down. I was 11, old enough to understand what death meant, young enough to think it was somehow my fault. It wasn't. I know that now. But for a long time, I thought if I'd been better, quieter, less of a burden, maybe my father would have been more careful. Maybe he would have checked the car that morning, or insisted on driving her himself, or made any of 1,000 different choices that would have kept her alive. Dante reached across the table, covered her hand with his. "Elena, your mother's death wasn't your fault. It was the fault of whoever planted that bomb, and the world that makes violence a viable solution to disagreement. But not you. Never you." Elena blinked back tears, hating that they came so easily, that this man she barely knew could crack her open with simple kindness. After she died, my father changed, became obsessed with control, with knowing where everyone was at all times. He sent me away to boarding schools not because he didn't love me, but because he loved me too much. Because keeping me close meant keeping me in danger. That must have felt like abandonment. It did. But I also understood it, which somehow made it worse. Because I couldn't hate him for it, couldn't even resent him properly. He was just broken. And I was the only thing he had left. They sat in silence for a while, hands joined across the scarred wood table, the music swelling around them. The saxophonist was playing something slow now, something that felt like longing made audible. "My father died when I was 10, Dante said eventually. Shot in the street over a debt he couldn't pay. I watched it happen, heard the gunshots, saw him fall. Couldn't do anything because I was a kid, powerless and terrified. Elena squeezed his hand. After that, it was just me and Isabella and my mother, who worked 3 jobs trying to keep us fed. I learned early that the world didn't care about fairness, that good people died for stupid reasons, that survival required being smarter, meaner, more willing to do what others wouldn't. Is that why you joined your world? Yes and no. I joined because I was good at it, because strategy came naturally, and violence didn't bother me the way it should. But I stayed because it was a way to make sure my mother never worked herself to death, that Isabella could go to good schools, that the people I loved would never be powerless again. That's not evil, Elena observed. That's just pragmatic. Dante's smile was sad. Tell that to the people I've hurt. Pragmatism and morality rarely align. But you have lines, things you won't do. Some. But they're fewer than they should be. At least you know that. At least you're not pretending to be something you're not. They talked until 1 a.m., until the club started closing, until the last notes of music faded into smoke and dim light. Elena learned about his sister's love of medicine, his mother's death 3 years ago, the way guilt lived in his chest like a stone. Dante learned about her years in Geneva, the languages she spoke, the way she drew in notebooks she never showed anyone. "Can I walk you home?" Dante asked, as they climbed the stairs back to street level. "That defeats the purpose of sneaking out. If Tony sees us together, he'll report to my father immediately. Then I'll walk you close to home. Just let me make sure you get there safe." They walked through quiet streets, Manhattan at its most honest, drunks and dreamers and people who belonged to the dark. Dante kept a careful distance, never touching, always watching, his body positioned between Elena and potential threats. 2 blocks from her building, they stopped. "This is where we part ways," Elena said, "for tonight. Dante, we can't keep doing this, sneaking around, lying to everyone, pretending this isn't as dangerous as it is. So what are you suggesting? That we stop? I don't know. Maybe. Probably." Elena looked, up at him, memorizing his face in the streetlight, the sharp angles and gentle eyes. "This can't end well. You know that." "Probably not." "But Elena, most good things in life carry risk. And you're God. You're the best risk I've taken in 15 years. That's just chemistry. Attraction. It'll fade. Will it?" Dante stepped closer, close enough that Elena could feel the heat of him. "Because I've had attraction before. I've had chemistry. But I've never had this feeling like I've found someone who understands what it means to be simultaneously powerful and powerless, seen and invisible." "Don't," Elena whispered. "Don't make this more than it is." "Then what is it?" "I don't know. But it's not love. It can't be love. Not this fast. Not like this. Okay. Then what do we call it? Temporary insanity?" Dante laughed, the sound surprising and genuine. "Fair enough. Can I see you again, in our temporary insanity?" "Yes. God help me. Yes." He leaned down, pressed a kiss to her cheek, gentle and chaste and absolutely devastating. "Be safe, Elena." "You too." She walked the final blocks alone, let herself in through the fire escape, slipped back into bed, just as Tony's replacement was taking position outside her door. And as she lay in the dark, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for tonight. For the honesty, the music, the way you look at me like I'm human. Sleep well. D." Elena smiled despite herself, despite everything, and typed back, "Thank you for seeing me. for making temporary insanity feel like the sanest choice I've ever made. Good night. She fell asleep with her phone clutched in her hand, the ghost of his kiss still warm on her cheek, and dreamed of music and danger and the terrible, beautiful risk of letting someone in. If you could freeze time in one perfect moment, would you? Or would you let it unfold, even knowing it might break your heart? The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful choreography. Elena and Dante became experts at the accidental encounter, at the gallery opening where they happened to cross paths, at the cafe where they coincidentally both ordered coffee at the same time. They learned each other's rhythms, found pockets in their surveillance coverage, became fluent in the language of brief touches and loaded glances. Her friends noticed the change in her, the way she smiled at her phone, the careful attention to her appearance, the mysterious disappearances. Sophia cornered her after class one Thursday afternoon, her expression caught between delight and concern. "Okay, you're going to tell me everything right now, or I'm going to make assumptions, and they're going to be wild." Elena tried for innocence. "Everything about what?" "About whoever's making you look like that." "Like what?" "Like you have a secret? Like you're glowing from the inside out? Like you're happy?" The word landed with unexpected weight. Was she happy? Elena examined the feeling, tried to name what she'd been carrying these past weeks. Not quite happiness. That felt too simple. But something close to it. Something that felt like possibility. "I might be seeing someone," Elena admitted. Sophia squealed, actually squealed, right there in the campus coffee shop. "Who? Tell me everything. How did you meet? Is he cute? Does he treat you well? When do we get to meet him?" "Slow down, it's complicated." "All the best ones are. Give me details." Elena chose her words carefully. "He's older, smart, kind of intense, and my father would absolutely lose his mind if he knew." "Oh my God, is he a professor? Please tell me he's not a professor. That's such a cliché." "He's not a professor. He's in business. Import, export, that kind of thing." All technically true, all fundamentally dishonest. "And you really like him?" Elena thought about jazz clubs and art galleries, about the way Dante listened, like every word she said mattered, about the careful distance he maintained even when she could see the desire in his eyes. "Yes, I really like him." "Then screw your father's opinion. You're 23. You're allowed to date whoever you want." If only it were that simple. That evening, Elena met Dante at a bookstore in the East Village, the kind of place with narrow aisles and floor-to-ceiling shelves and the smell of old paper and possibility. They drifted through separate sections for 20 minutes, maintaining their careful fiction, before gravitating toward each other in the poetry aisle. "Neruda or Rumi?" Dante asked, his voice low. "Both, but for different reasons." "Explain." Elena pulled a slim volume from the shelf, flipped it open to a random page. Neruda writes about love like it's consumption, like the beloved is something to be devoured, possessed, merged with until you can't tell where one person ends and another begins. And Rumi? Rumi writes about love like it's transcendence, like two whole people, choosing to walk parallel paths, touching but never consuming. Dante considered this. "Which kind do you want?" "I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe neither." She looked up at him, found him already watching her with that intensity that made her breath catch. "What kind have you experienced?" "Neither. I've had possession that pretended to be love, and I've had parallel paths that never actually touched. But the thing you're describing, consumption that still respects autonomy, transcendence that's still grounded in physical reality, I've never had that. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe we get to find out." They bought books neither of them would read. walked out into the October evening that was growing colder, the city preparing for winter. Dante's car was parked 2 blocks away, Marco at the wheel, as always. "Come back to my place," Dante said suddenly. "Just for an hour. Just to talk without worrying about who's watching." Every rational part of Elena's brain screamed warnings. Going to his home, his private space, crossed a line from careful to reckless. "Okay," she said anyway. The penthouse was everything she'd imagined, and nothing like she'd expected. Yes, the view was spectacular, Manhattan spreading out below them in glittering grids. Yes, the space was expensive, all clean lines and careful design. But it was also lived in, comfortable. Books stacked on tables, a half-finished chess game on the coffee table, framed photographs of people she assumed were family. "I expected something more, stark," Elena admitted, gravitating toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Most people do. They expect black leather and chrome, very villain chic." Dante shrugged out of his jacket, draped it over a chair. "But I spend most of my life in spaces designed to intimidate. Home should be different." Elena studied the photographs, found a younger Dante with a pretty girl who had his eyes. "Isabella? The last time I saw her, 2 years ago in Paris. She doesn't know I keep photos, thinks it's too risky. But I needed something. Some proof that she existed, that she's real. You must miss her. Every day." Dante moved to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "That's the thing they don't tell you about sacrifice. It's not heroic, it's just lonely. You make the choice you think is right, the one that keeps people safe, and then you live with the hole it leaves. Is that what we are? Another sacrifice waiting to happen?" "Maybe, probably." He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Elena, I need to be honest with you about something." Her stomach dropped. Here it was, the revelation, the truth that would prove everyone right. "Okay. I had a meeting with your father this week, the one I told you about. How did it go?" "Tense. We negotiated territories, made agreements, did the usual diplomatic dance. But at the end, he asked me a question." "What question?" Dante's jaw tightened. "He asked if I was sleeping with his daughter." Elena's blood went cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know he had a daughter." "He believed you?" "No, but he couldn't prove otherwise." "Elena, your father's not stupid. He knows something's happening, he just can't quite figure out what. And he's troubled by it." "Troubled enough to do something?" "Not yet. But he made it clear that if I hurt you, if I use you in any way, there won't be negotiations or truces. There will just be war." Elena moved to the couch, sank into it, her mind racing. "We should stop. We should end this before someone gets hurt." "We should," Dante agreed, but he sat beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. "But are you going to?" "No. God help me." "No. Me neither." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their decision settling between them. "Tell me something," Elena said eventually. "Something real. Something you've never told anyone." Dante was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on his knee. "I'm terrified," he said finally. "All the time. Not of death or violence or losing power, but of becoming my father, of being so focused on survival that I forget how to actually live." "You're nothing like your father." "How would you know? You never met him. Because you chose differently. You sent Isabella away to save her instead of using her as leverage. You built an empire through strategy instead of just brutality. You're sitting here with me, risking everything instead of taking the safe route. Maybe that just makes me stupid instead of scared. Maybe it makes you human." Dante looked at her, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. I don't feel human most of the time. I feel like I'm performing humanity, going through the motions of what normal people do. But with you, I feel real. Like I'm actually here instead of just occupying space. Elena's throat tightened. I feel the same way. Like I've spent my whole life being a carefully curated version of a person. And you're the first one who's ever looked beneath that and seen me. You're extraordinary, Elena. Not despite your carefully curated version, but because of it. You've learned to survive in impossible circumstances with grace and intelligence, and that's not nothing. Sometimes I wish I could be different. Reckless, careless, one of those girls who doesn't calculate every risk. Then you wouldn't be you, and I like you. The admission hung between them, simple and devastating. I like you too, Elena whispered. Dante reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Can I kiss you? Properly this time, without dares or public spaces or time limits? Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, to pull away, to remember all the reasons this was dangerous. But Elena was done being careful, done calculating, done pretending she didn't want exactly this. Their lips met, soft at first, testing, then deeper, more urgent. Months of tension and denial and carefully controlled desire finally breaking free. Dante's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and Elena's fingers clutched his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was consuming and transcendent, possession and autonomy. Everything they'd talked about in the bookstore made physical and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "This is really stupid," he said. "The stupidest. Worth it, though." "Absolutely." They kissed again, slower this time, learning the taste and texture of each other. Elena felt the careful control she'd maintained for weeks beginning to crack, felt herself wanting things she'd never allowed herself to want. Dante must have sensed it, because he pulled back, his hands framing her face. "Elena, we can stop. We should probably stop." "I don't want to stop. Neither do I. But I need you to be sure. Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. Your father will know. My people will know. And the consequences become real." "They've been real since the first kiss," Elena pointed out. "We're just finally admitting it." Dante searched her face for a long moment, looking for doubt or hesitation. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he kissed her again, deeper, more certain. They moved together toward his bedroom, a path marked by discarded clothes and breathless laughter, and the giddy recklessness of people who'd finally stopped pretending to be careful. The bedroom was as comfortable as the living room, the bed enormous, sheets dark against pale walls. Dante laid her down gently, his body covering hers, his weight reassuring and perfect. "Are you sure?" he asked one more time. "Yes." "Are you?" Terrified and certain. "Is that possible?" "Apparently." What followed was tender and intense, careful and consuming. Everything Elena had imagined, and nothing like she'd expected. Dante was attentive, patient, asking what she wanted, what felt good, making sure she was with him every moment. And Elena, who'd spent her whole life being quiet and controlled, found herself loud, demanding, unafraid to ask for what she needed. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweaty and satisfied, and slightly stunned by what had just happened. "That was," Dante started. "Yeah," Elena agreed. "We're in so much trouble." The worst trouble. But neither of them moved. Neither of them suggested she should leave. Instead, they stayed wrapped around each other, talking in whispers, sharing stories and fears, and the kind of intimacy that's only possible in darkness. Elena told him about the nightmares she still had, about her mother's death replaying in her mind, despite never actually witnessing it. Dante told her about the first time he'd killed someone, about the way guilt had tasted like metal for weeks afterward. They didn't shy away from the dark parts, didn't try to make themselves better or more palatable. They just were, honest and broken, and choosing each other anyway. At 3 a.m., Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Tony. "Where are you?" Reality crashed back in. Elena sat up, started looking for her clothes. "I have to go. Tony's noticed I'm gone." Dante helped her dress, his fingers gentle on her skin. "What will you tell him?" "That I went for a walk, couldn't sleep. He'll report it to my father. But there's nothing they can prove. Elena, I know, this was reckless, but I don't regret it. Neither do I." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "But things are going to get more complicated now." They were always going to get complicated. Dante called for Marco, who appeared within minutes, professional enough not to comment on Elena's disheveled appearance. The drive back to her apartment was quiet. Elena watching the city pass by, trying to memorize the feeling of being chosen, being wanted, being real. "Miss Moretti," Marco said as they pulled up to her building, surprising her by using her real name. "For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. I haven't seen the boss actually smile in years." "Thank you, Marco. But be careful. Your father's not the only one watching. There are other families, other interests, and they won't be kind if they decide you're a weakness they can exploit." Elena nodded, the warmth from the evening cooling slightly. "I'll be careful." She made it into her building, up the fire escape, into bed just as dawn was breaking over Manhattan. Her phone buzzed again. "Dante, thank you for tonight, for everything. I know this is complicated, but you're worth every complication." "Sleep well." Elena smiled, typed back. "Thank you for seeing me, for all of me. Tonight was perfect." She fell asleep as the sun rose, her body still carrying the memory of his touch, her heart full of something dangerous and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. She woke 4 hours later to pounding on her door and Tony's voice, urgent and afraid. "Miss Elena, you need to come now. It's your father." Elena stumbled to the door, still half asleep. "What happened?" "There was an incident, a shooting at one of his properties. He's alive, but you need to come." The world tilted. Elena grabbed her phone, her keys, followed Tony to the car, her mind racing through possibilities. This was it. The consequences catching up. The danger she'd been warned about made real. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dante. "I just heard. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, I'm here." Elena stared at the message, at the timing, at the terrible coincidence. Dante had been with her all night, which meant he couldn't have orchestrated this. But it also meant he'd created the perfect alibi, the perfect way to prove he wasn't involved even if he was. Doubt crept in, cold and insidious. What if everything, the romance, the vulnerability, the intimacy, what if it had all been performance? What if she'd given herself to a man who was using her exactly the way everyone warned he would? Elena's hands shook as she typed back, "I need space. Don't contact me for a while." She deleted the message thread, turned off her phone, and stared out the window as Brooklyn approached, trying to prepare herself for whatever came next. Because if her father had been attacked, if this was the opening move in a war, then everything was about to change. And Elena would have to decide, once and for all, where her loyalty lay. With the father who'd protected her through imprisonment, or the man who'd freed her through risk. Neither choice felt right. Both felt like betrayal. The hospital was chaos, security everywhere, her father's men stationed at every entrance. Elena pushed through to the ICU, found Victor sitting up in bed, his arm bandaged, but otherwise whole. "Baby girl," he said when he saw her, his voice rough. "You shouldn't be here. Where else would I be? Safe. Away from this." Elena pulled a chair close, took his good hand. "What happened?" "Ambush. I was inspecting a warehouse in Red Hook, and someone opened fire. Got me in the arm, killed 2 of my men." Victor's expression was grim. This was a message. From who? That's what I'm trying to figure out. It wasn't Salvatore's style, too messy. But it's someone who wants me distracted, vulnerable. "Do you have enemies besides Dante?" Victor laughed, bitter. "I have dozens. The DeLucas have been pushing into my territory for months. The Russos still blame me for what happened 5 years ago. Could be anyone. What do you need me to do?" "Stay safe, stay hidden, stay away from complications." The word landed deliberately. Elena knew exactly what complication he meant. "Dad." "I know, Elena. About you and Dante. Tony's been reporting, piecing together the pattern. And I need you to understand something." Victor squeezed her hand, his expression deadly serious. "I believe Dante Salvatore didn't orchestrate this. I believe he's been genuine in his pursuit of you. But that doesn't mean he's safe. It means he's made you a target." "I can handle myself." "Can you?" "Because the people who did this, they'll have done their homework. They know about you now, know you exist. And they know the fastest way to hurt both me and Dante is through you." The words settled like ice in Elena's stomach. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to choose. Stay in my world, under my protection, and break things off with Dante. Or go to him, make it official, and accept that you'll be a target for the rest of your life. Those are terrible options. They're the only options. Because middle ground doesn't exist, not anymore. You're either protected or exposed, and there's no in between." Elena pulled her hand away, stood, moved to the window. Manhattan spread out below, glittering and dangerous, full of people making impossible choices every day. "I don't want to lose you," she said quietly. "But I also don't want to lose myself. And staying locked away, hiding forever, that's losing myself by degrees. So you're choosing him. I'm choosing me, and yes, that includes him." Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, sadder. "Your mother made the same choice. Chose love over safety. And it got her killed, Elena. I know. But she also got years of actually living before that happened. And maybe that's worth it. Not to me. Losing her broke something in me that never healed. I know, Dad, but you can't protect me from life itself. You can only teach me how to survive it." Victor closed his eyes, and Elena saw him calculating, weighing options, trying to find a path that kept everyone safe. But some problems didn't have safe solutions. "If you do this," he said finally, "if you choose Dante, I can't protect you the way I have been. My enemies will know about you, will use you as leverage. And I can't. I can't watch you die too. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you'll need to learn to protect yourself. Training, weapons, real security protocols. And you'll need to accept that Dante's world is now your world, with all the danger that entails." It was permission and warning wrapped together, the closest Victor could come to blessing something he fundamentally opposed. "Okay," Elena said. "Teach me." Over the next week, Elena's life transformed. Her father, once recovered enough to leave the hospital, had her moved to a safe house in Brooklyn. There, she trained with his best security personnel, learned weapons handling, defensive driving, threat assessment. It was brutal, exhausting, and exactly what she needed. She didn't contact Dante, didn't respond to his texts or calls. Part of it was genuine need for space, time to process everything. But part of it was also tactical, If someone was watching, waiting to exploit their connection, radio silence was the smartest move. But God, she missed him. Missed his voice, his laugh, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in any room. On the 8th day, Victor called her into his study. "Sit," he said, and his tone was serious but not angry. Elena sat. "I've been investigating the shooting. Had my people dig into every angle, every possible connection. And it was the DeLucas, specifically Chiara DeLuca. She's been planning a move for months, trying to destabilize both me and Salvatore, create an opening to take Manhattan." Elena remembered the woman from the gallery, her sharp warning, her calculating eyes. "She knows about me. She does now. Which means Dante needs to know too, officially. You need to make a choice, Elena. Either we tell him you're staying away for your own safety, or we tell him you're choosing this, choosing him, and we all deal with the consequences together. You'd work with Dante, I'd tolerate him. For you. And because Chiara DeLuca is a threat to both of us, the enemy of my enemy, and all that." Elena's heart raced. This was it, the moment of actual choice. She could walk away, go back to her hidden life, stay safe and small. Or she could step forward, claim her place in this dangerous world, fight for what she wanted. "I choose him," she said. "I choose us." Victor nodded slowly. "Then we'd better call him. Because if we're doing this, we do it smart." "So what do you think happens next? Will Dante take her back into his world? Or will this choice cost them every subscribe and turn on your notifications?"